Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining Roosevelt University for the second Lifelong Laker Learning webinar for the school year. These webinars are designed for alumni, students, and community to continue learning beyond the classroom and beyond graduation. My name is Brittany Risley. I'm the Associate Director of Alumni and Donor Engagement here, and I'm very proud to be a Roosevelt alumna and will be dropping my contact information in the chat box if you'd ever like to talk about alumni events, benefits, or give me some feedback. So I would love to introduce now Roosevelt alumnus Brian Ray, who is a Roosevelt class of 2009 graduate in information technology. Brian is the global head of data science and AI for Eviden. Eviden is a global leader in data-driven, trusted, and sustainable digital transformation. This company stems from worldwide leading positions in digital cloud data, advanced computing, and security. He's working with clients like Estee Lauder and Google Cloud to bring the latest Gen AI capabilities to market. So today's Lifelong Laker Learning session will explore the use cases, solutions, and capabilities required to deliver generative artificial intelligence. This session is open to all levels and will demonstrate some Gen AI capabilities. Just a friendly reminder, if you think of questions, please add them to the chat box and we will be monitoring them. And now I'd like to hand it over to you, Brian.
Thank you so much, Brittany, for the introduction. That was very helpful. And hello, everyone. Hello, Lakers. Hello, guests and friends. Today, we're going to talk about an exciting topic, which is Gen AI. I'm going to bring up some slides here. So Gen AI is fun. It's useful, and it can also be dangerous. It's a interesting spot we're in, and it's really bubbled up. So we're going to go over it today. Eviden is a leader in developing these solutions and helping enterprise clients bring them to market. So we have a lot of interesting data we have from ourselves, and there's also a lot of data out there about how it's going in the world right now with Gen AI. So you'll get to hear about that today. We'll show you some information on that and some demos as well. But let me roll back to way back when my grandmother, who also was a Roosevelt grad, she studied economics at Roosevelt, and she was named the first woman officer of the Amoco, now BP Amoco or BP company in Chicago. I know, the oil industry did not see a lot of women, or hardly any, if any. And then, her being a Roosevelt student while she was there, and then also a grad in economics, really made a big difference. And there was a lot going on in Grant Park across the way as well. And you see here too, she was integral in the Amoco building, now they called Aon building now. And I don't know if she got to pick the marble siding that they had to take down or not, but she did pick the carpet, she said. And they also had some of the earlier IBM systems in that building as well. And they took up quite a bit of space, and I got to see them when I was a kid. And what little known fact is they also contributed back to the customer information control system from IBM, from Amoco. So it might have been one of the first open source contributions from any enterprise to any software company. So, really excited for that. I visited in 1983, and it was my birthday, and scrolled "Happy Birthday, Brian" on a terminal type of computer, and she said the team had to program that at the time. Now, I graduated Roosevelt as an adult, raising children, and I really enjoyed my time at Roosevelt. And while I was there, even prior to me being there, I founded the Chicago Python User Group. So if you ever heard the Python programming language, or Chippy, I was one of the founders of that, and ordered a lot of pizza. We even had our meeting at the Gage building there at Roosevelt before, and if I remember, it was completely sold out. So it was really a big hit. I also was named one of the top techs. I was on the very first list of top techs from Cranes, and it was only 25 that they would induct in it at first, and they turned it to 50 the next year. But I was the first 25, and was proud to be a Roosevelt grad at the time. Currently, I head up data science and AI for consulting firms, and right now Eviden. And Eviden's a large consulting firm. It's based in France, but we have a huge North American presence. And as we mentioned, we have some really great customers that we're delivering Gen AI today for. So what is all this Gen AI stuff? So if you look at the inner circle here, the donut circle here, it in my mind, the way I think about it is it's math plus data plus hardware and plus what I call trials or trying things. And you put those together, and by math I mean machine learning algorithms and other mathematical algorithms, but you put those all together and it allows you to converse, summarize, create, and organize. You can converse, and a lot of you I'm sure has heard of ChatGPT, but you can converse with it, meaning that you can interact with large language models and it can respond to you. It can also summarize information that is either in text or, in this case, there's a Rodrigo painting of a blue dog, and it can say this is a blue dog. It can create, and if I ask the DALL-E model to create me a bunch of images of blue dogs, it will create a lot of clever images of blue dogs instantaneously. And then also it can organize data. So if you have a lot of documents, it can go and it can organize those, or images or other texts. You can organize those and allow them to be searchable, retrievable, and manageable. So those are the use cases that I find most interesting. And what I've also found is a lot of people are already using like the ChatGPT interface to do things and other interfaces to do things on their phone and other places like that. So it's fun. It's also very useful. And as you've seen, there's uses in academia, there's uses in enterprise. Here's a couple of the top majors at Roosevelt, and I can see in your business degree, if you had to write a paper or whatever, you could kind of get it started that way. You have to be sure that it's okay with the school to do that. In accounting, you can do summarization reports on financial reporting. And music theater, I'll give you a music example here in a moment of how it can be used to help with music and copyright. And of course, biology sciences and computer science and IT have all these different usefulness. I prefer to be in the Venn diagram of fun and useful and not dangerous, but there are also some dangerous elements too, and I'll go over those in a moment. That's a popular clip from the Unity platform using Gen AI to generate in an environment completely with Gen AI. And it's, most people will agree it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and it really adds a new level of detail to gaming, video as well, movies. Of course, there's a writer's strike that just got resolved, and where I'm living now in Los Angeles, so there's also controversy around it, but there's a lot of applications, of course, that are fun. Here's something that's a little fun, and it's also useful for you music files. So there was a case where folks thought that, if you know the gentleman on the right, in the picture in the bottom right, in 1970, feel free to put it in chat. Yep, George Harrison, you got it. And then the Chiffrons, it was thought that he stole some melodies from them. And, what Daniel Rees said, and when he did this in a TED Talk, he says what his aspiration is to generate all the possible melody sequences. And you're able to do that with music because, there's these tonals, FACE and so on and so forth. And then you're able to generate those. And he's now generated over 471 billion melody sequences, so that you can then map that back to music and you can see if they fall in the same spot or not. So this is able to more definitively understand the fingerprint of music, and that's fun. That's also very useful. Another thing that's a little dangerous here, I'm just going to take an example here. Let's say I use machine learning to make a bunch of assumptions about a person. And then I just read some text and I automate this for thousands of individuals and say, Marvin, he appears to be 31 years old. We think he's American-born African, second generation. He lives in Houston, Texas. He likes dogs. And they said, well, wouldn't it be cool if we could generate Marvin type pictures in a marketing ad that look like that? And this is what came out of the generative AI. We think this looks like Marvin potentially. We don't know exactly what type of dog he has, but it's good enough to get his attention. The problem was, is when we fact check it, he was bit by a dog when he was a kid, and he hates dogs, and he grew up in South Africa by American parents. So Marvin was not a black man with a dog. He was a white man in South Africa with a cat. So once again, it can be dangerous to make too many assumptions with AI, and it's always good to do some fact checking. It doesn't matter if you're an end user of AI or if you're producing things with it. It's always good to check your facts. Otherwise, you could end up offending someone.
Here, check it out. There's tons of chat GPT apps for your phone. So then I can take whatever latest dumb thing Bebe texted me, I copy it, then I open the GPT app, click respond to, paste her text here, hit write, it just thinks for a second. You would look great with any length of hair, trying a new look could be fun. Copy that into messages and send it off. It's super easy and convenient, and it saves me a ton of time because she texts me so goddamn much.
So the backstory of the South Park episode is that he enamors her with all these clever responses to ChatGPT, and then she, invites him out to dinner, and he has nothing clever to say because he doesn't have ChatGPT anymore behind it. And another example of fact checking, or taking it too far, is when Bard, which is a Google product, and trust me, I'm a huge partner with Google and Amazon and Microsoft, and in practice we have 4,500 practitioners under me that deliver generative AI through those. But they did make a big oops, and they did a marketing campaign to announce Bard, which is their generative AI. It's kind of like ChatGPT but Google's, and they said it asks, what new discoveries from this telescope can I tell a 9-year-old about? And it suggested that it took the very first picture of a planet outside of our solar system. And that's a really interesting fact that it put in there just as an example. Problem is it was wrong. It was taken by European South Observatory, a very large telescope, LT, which is confirmed by NASA in 2004. So it gave the wrong answer. So it has a little bit to do about fact checking and using your common sense and things like that. So there was certainly a mistake there. As
Killmonger was right. Wrong. You see, I would never say these things, but someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele.
Comedian Jordan Peele actually produced this video to warn about the future of fake news.
So again, Jordan is a comedian, and he faked Obama here, of course. And, it's a mistake to be evil, obviously, to do that. Now, does that mean all generative AI, is evil or has that potential? Not necessarily. What it really means is that we have to be careful how it's used, and there has to be some governance put into place. And it doesn't matter if you're a school or enterprise or government, it's all coming there. It's all coming to a point of setting up some safeguards and rules about how this new technology is used. So be prepared for that. So question is was asked here by Forrester, Gartner, IDC, these are all the big organizations that do market research. It said, which option best describes your organization's investment to generative AI to assist with writing and editing content or communications? And it said 49% plan to implement it. 23 said implementing it now. 3% said they're not going to. 7% said they already have, but expanding it. And 19 said they're expanding or upgrading implementations. So you add that all up, almost everybody's going this route. It's really, wide sweeping. So everyone's going to be using this for something, and it's very useful technology for that reason. So what does the future of Gen AI look like? Well, I did this little search on Google Trends, and amazingly, at one point in January this year, you can see that in the red line there, that's baseball, and the blue line, that's the term ChatGPT. And it's literally those terms, ChatGPT versus baseball, American pastime. At one point, ChatGPT almost surpassed baseball, our favorite pastime, America's favorite pastime. And wow, that's pretty interesting that term became so popular for a few moments that it surpassed our pastime. So that means that everybody is really talking about this technology, that everybody's really interested in this for various reasons. And there's I love these hype circles, and I actually collect the old ones and see when they've been wrong. A lot of times they're right, and sometimes they're wrong. But this is Gartner. Gartner is predicting the cycle that new technology will go through regarding its expectations over time. And hopefully you can see it on your screen, but at the very tip of that is generative AI right now. And it's also blue. So the spot it's at the tip of hype. So right now you're in the tip of hype for generative AI. And there's other interesting technologies on here like graph data science, which are kind of similar to that, and AI simulations, casual AI, and post-quantum cryptography. You need quantum to do post-quantum cryptography first, so we're close to that. But generative AI is at the tip of this, and the blue means that its whole cycle to reach productivity is 2.5 years. So if you look at it that way, what's happening next in a year from now is that's going to go through a trough of disillusionment. That means that people are going to be like, oh, great, another Gen AI, or I don't think it's as cool as I thought it was yesterday. But then it goes through a slope of enlightenment, and then it becomes a plateau of productivity and pretty much stays there as a stabilized technology. That is the hype cycle by Gartner, and that's where Gen AI is today. So if it feels like it's in a lot of hype right now, you're absolutely correct. But also be aware where it's going, because if you really want to invest in the technology, you want to go through that slope of enlightenment, being for the long term, and go through a plateau of productivity. If you're a student and you want to work in this field, you got to be resilient against that, because you got to realize by the time if you're a sophomore or whatever, undergrad, or even if you're in grad school, you got to be resilient and understand how that process works, because it does take some time. But nothing wrong with grabbing onto the hype right now and enjoying it, because there's a lot of cool technology there. Another way to look at it, 30% of hours worked today could be automated by 2030, they say. And then if you look at STEM professionals, which is what I've been for most of my career, you see that between 15 and 30%, or roughly 16% of your hours worked could be resolved. And it's also generally thought that the things that you'd be doing during that time that it's taking away are not that much fun anyway. So like the monotonous things and things like that. Look at the office support is really, they think it's really going to matter, and so on and so forth. This comes from McKinsey, by the way. So what about this tech? What about the technology of who makes Gen AI? Well, who makes Gen AI? I would largely say it is the hyperscalers. What I mean by hyperscalers, those are Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Meta, folks like that. And it's become a very confusing space, because sometimes when they didn't make it, they still buy it, they purchase it. So they're investing billions of dollars in this technology. And the question comes up, why? Why do you think they're investing this? Well, the reason why is if you use these platforms, they charge you to use them, especially for the enterprise, and they can make money off them. You can solve great problems and you can get return on your investment, but they also are going to make a lot of money, so they're investing in it. So largely this is cloud technology. What I mean by cloud is they're hosted in the internet type technology, for the reasons of that it takes a lot of money to make one of these models, these foundational models, because it has to use a lot of those computational resources. So it has to use special hardware sometimes, like one example is called the GPU or TPU, and it needs to do it over a long period of time and needs to use a lot of them. So you're talking about thousands of them sometimes, and over weeks or days, and to just build one version of the model that gives you that functionality. You can change it a little bit. You can tune it, you can fine tune it, you can distill it in some ways, so only pieces of it are used, or you can use prompt engineering and you can add your own adaptive layers to it. So there's some technical terms there, but basically for those who aren't that technical, you can add some functionality to it. So it's really cool technology in that sense, but it's a confusing space. For instance, Meta came out with Llama 2. And Llama 2 is an open source large language model that they are providing free to use if you're not a competitor with them, basically, because they put a limit of number of millions of users. I forget what it is at this moment, but a lot of millions of users. So they're basically saying, TikTok, you can't use our open source model. And there's also rules about you can't use the output from it to train other models. What I mean by models is that's the implementation of this Gen AI technology. So there's a lot of rules, a lot of complexity in the space, but it's very quickly moving as well. And here's another example of that. Just since 2018, these are all the models, and there's even more that I don't have on here. These are all the models just for language models that came out in that time. And you see they're just continuously being developed and released. And it's a confusing space for that. And there's also this aspect of having what's called a leaderboard. Hugging Face is a tech company that wrote chatbots at one point, and they eventually got into the hosting of technology that they've open sourced, as well as leaderboards for the LLMs and being kind of a commuter hub for generative AI language models. And they're really blown up overnight. And they have a leaderboard there, but my analogy I like to use is a leaderboard for LLMs, like saying there's a leaderboard for cars. You can't have just a leaderboard for cars. I would say my car, which is a Jeep, I think my Jeep's the best, but it's horrible on gas. I wish it was electric. I may go that route soon. But some other person might say the best car is a Lamborghini or something, and you can't compare those functionalities to each other because the use cases are different. The slide here also brings up some distinctions. These are all different implementations of large language models or Gen AI, and you've probably heard of ChatGPT. And it says for that one, it says human-like text providing coherent responses across various topics. And then you compare that to Bard, which I mentioned was from Google, and it says it's better for critical thinking. Insight's a well-reasoned responsive. So its reasoning engine is really strong. And Claude 2, which is now the folks who made that is now purchased by Amazon, demonstrates domain-specific knowledge, making choices for complex problem solving. And Llama 2, which I mentioned in the previous slide, is that it's great at various age areas, particularly programming, creative writing, showcasing high level of versatility and proficiency. So long story short, the use cases will determine what is the best technology to use for them. A little bit about how it'll impact, since I'm talking to a university here, how it will impact schools. So here I'm bringing up University of Michigan's report, and they publish this online. You can find it online. And they talk about that they are setting up some guidelines and some governance around Gen AI. There's a lot of concerns the university may have, including plagiarism or whether you should use Gen AI or not in certain cases. And ultimately, it says in the paper, they left it up to, there's some obvious things like you can't plagiarize, but then there's some things they should leave up to the professors, saying whether it should be used or not. And that's an interesting way of going about it. But they also say it's also important to recognize that regardless of one's opinion on the potential benefits and risk of Gen AI, this technology cannot be ignored. So even if you don't like it because it's too risky, or you think it's, the robot overlords are going to take over or whatever, you need to still understand it because it's being used by my 80-year-old mother. It's being used out in the space. And here's a couple of concerns that they mentioned as well. Students may defer to providing answers even if they believe that the solution is incorrect. So there may be like, well, and there's not an answer for everything. The answers provided may also advance techniques beyond the current skill of the student. So it might be that you haven't mastered it completely what's being said. Kind of goes back to that South Park episode. If he can't speak so kindly to his girlfriend, in reality, then he probably shouldn't be doing the word ChatGPT because he'll get called out on it. The student may provide answers without taking the time to check it at all. So that's a real big thing. Is fact checking. There's a thing called hallucinations in LLMs where it gives you an answer that sounds convincing, but it's wrong, like the BARD answer that I gave you. And if you're using it to generate code, if you don't understand the code that's being generated, or even if you do, it could create a couple bugs that would have been, if it doesn't do it well, it could take you more time to debug it than it would have been just to learn how to write it the right way in the first place. So it's talking about a little bit of waste of time and unnecessary frustration, but what it's really talking about here is just the process. What is the process of Gen AI? What should it be used at? And hopefully in the university level, they start talking about that. I'm going to do a couple demos here. I think what I need to do is I need to stop. Wait, actually, I think I can use the same screen. If you just give me a moment. Nothing like a live demo. So waiting for this to come up. So what this is, and I like this one because it predated really the big Gen AI boom that you see right now, but it still uses the same core concepts. And this is called Atlas by Nomic. And you can find it at atlas.nomic.ai if you're interested in it. And what it's showing here, and it's taking a while to render because it has to render millions of points, is that you'll see that it has sections of interest that it figures out on its own. It figures out that the Zodiac texts that are tweets are associated with each other. And it shows that, that this whole area is a little bit out of talking about, music and clothing and other things like that. And I'm waiting for this to render. And you see here, if I look just at the Gemini ones, they're separate from the other science and things like that. And that's really how a large language model works under the hood, is it finds these relationships between language by how they're used. So when you build one of the foundational models, these are the ones that you base the functionality out of. They would feed enormous amount of data into that. For instance, all the Wikipedia articles in all 20 languages is one example of that, or all the web pages it scraped over time, and so on and so forth. And it would feed that into all the books it could find and feed that into it. And that builds that kind of foundational understanding of language. And the reason we didn't do this before, frankly, Moore's Law, is we didn't have computational resources to do it. Having that hardware available, things like what's produced by NVIDIA or Intel or other folks, that allows you to do that, has led to you being able to build these foundational functionalities. I'll give another quick demo here real quick, and we'll take some questions. Hopefully you're enjoying this. I'm having fun presenting. I feel like I'm back in college. So I'm going to upload a photo into Vertex AI. And Vertex AI is the tool set, and some of this is still being developed as we go, model garden, things like that. And I'm going to say, here's a photo I took of an advertisement from Roosevelt University. And I said, well, generate a caption for me. And it says, Roosevelt alumni making history, episode part 1. I took that largely from the text, but I could also ask questions to it. I can say, how many people are in the photo? Answer is 3, and I got it right. Are they happy? Apparently they are happy. Are they looking at each other? No, they're not looking at each other. That's correct. They're looking at us. And I will stop that, and I will take some questions. Let's see, how best do I? Okay. There's an episode of Black Mirror where they are able to derive music from someone's thoughts and create music from past samples. Is AI adapted enough to create new music like this example? Oh boy, I don't know if I know the answer to that one. Well, I know that we can figure out generally what area of the brain is being used, but I don't know if we can get to the level of generating music based off of that yet. But it'd be a good experiment. It'd be worth trying. Like I said, there was that map of melodies. So if there's some way to do that, Gen AI generated music is not new, right? There's folks that are doing that today, but I think the really key here is based off of thoughts, kind of in that sense. So Black Mirror is a really great series. I've always watched those, and the reason I like them is because it's very precautionary about AI. I work in the field, and we have 4,500 data scientists in the world that work on generative AI type things, we think. And it's good to be precautionary. It's good to look at both sides. We definitely want to sell it and solve problems with it, but we also want to do it in a way that's responsible. And Black Mirror is really a good example of when it kind of goes wrong sometimes. So, what are common errors that AI make? If I'm fact checking AI, how do I do so effectively so it actually saves me time? Fact checking is a huge part of it. One thing we try to do when we implement it, and I see other folks following suit, is they try to reference, if it's summarizing a document. One example would be that we took all the manuals from a very large big box hardware store, and we put them in our Gen AI, and we replaced the current technology for using a text bot to chat with a person, and it takes like 45 minutes to get an answer before that. And then you can ask them questions like, what kind of batteries does my carbon monoxide detector take? And it generates an answer, says, it takes these 2 AA batteries or whatever the answer was. And then it also says, here's a link back to the manual of where we got this information. Now that second part's really important. It's really important that you're able to go back and fact check, yourself what was derived from the Gen AI.
All right. Well, Brian, I think that we were very efficient and we have already answered all of our questions. So thank you so much. I learned a lot because I didn't know a lot about AI going into this. And I know I'm getting a lot of great feedback from your presentation today. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always quite fond of the school, and both from my grandmother's perspectives and what she led to, what she did with her life, and my own. So, don't hesitate to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Brian Ray, Los Angeles, or Evidon. And then, feel free to connect with me and then stay in touch. Really good to see people here today. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. All right. Well, I'm going to close out with some additional thoughts here. I want to thank all of our viewers for tuning into the webinar today. I want to remind you, Roosevelt University offers many bachelor and graduate degree programs in information technology, including cyber and information security. And we also have an accelerated program for earning a bachelor and graduate degree in just 5 years concurrently. To learn more, visit roosevelt.edu/programs. Finally, our next webinar will be with alumnus Micah Spangler on Tuesday, November 14th from 12 to 1 p.m. Central Time. Micah will be hosting an interactive Q&A exploring how advocacy can be applied to influence policymakers and thought leaders to support strong multilateral investments. He will speak from his experience working at the intersection of foreign policy and grassroots engagements in Washington, D.C. Thank you, everyone. We hope to see you again soon. Have a great day, Lakers.